What's going on, everybody? It's Friday, August 26th, and this is the College Football Daily. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. We're going to be joined by Michael Bruntz of Husker 247 in just a little bit to help us preview Nebraska's first game of the season against Northwestern, all the way out in Dublin, Ireland. So a little bit of a special preview we're going to look at here today. We're going to look at the behind the scenes of the travel out to Dublin, Ireland for the Huskers, the entire football team, what they're doing out there in a foreign country, getting ready for Week 0 to kick off the 2022 college football season. So let's bring him in now, Michael Bruntz. Michael, thanks for joining me, man. Live from Dublin, Ireland. First of all, I need to know about your travel to get all the way out there. I mean, it must have been quite the experience to go overseas.
Yeah, kind of actually an easy trip. Like you got from Omaha to Chicago to Dublin. Fingers crossed there were no flight issues and everything worked out. But yeah, it's kind of crazy the number of Nebraska fans that were rolling to Dublin. I know they said prior to the game week and everything, they're expecting about 12,000 Nebraska fans. I would be surprised if that's a little bit higher for how many fans are coming for this game. So it'll probably feel like a home game there. But it's this game's been 2 years in the making because it got canceled twice by COVID. So it's been a heavy lift, I think, for the team to get here and pads and everything else, but it's finally game week. It feels like it's taken forever.
So you mentioned how this has been 2 years in the making. I guess that must have really excited the Husker fans. As you said, there's 12,000 going to Dublin Island. It's probably gonna be more, and it is a Big Ten West game, so it must really feel like a home game. Have you noticed a lot of Nebraska fandom already, even though we're still a day away from the game?
Yeah, I mean, you see people walking around with Nebraska shirts on. My flight from Chicago was probably 85% Nebraska fans going over for the game. I know that other reporters who are here that were on different flights kind of had a similar experience. But yeah, it's one of those things where you take a week off, you get around the country a little bit, you get a game on Saturday, and I think there's a lot of fans that were pretty interested in that. I think too, they kind of had some difficulty, I think, with COVID and everything else, and kind of the excitement with the game. But I think people are ready to travel and move around and go to Nebraska road games again.
So it'll be 12:30 Eastern, the kickoff time in Dublin, Ireland. Of course, in Dublin time, that'll be 5 hours ahead at 5:30 local time. So I got to ask, what is the vibe of the team right now, knowing that they are traveling? I'm putting the emphasis on a road game right now, and I know it's a neutral site against Northwestern, but these guys are going overseas to play this football game, showing off the game of college football to an international audience. What's the vibe of the Huskers right now, knowing that they're going to be showcased as probably the primary game in Week 0?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Nebraska hasn't been to a bowl game since 2016, and this feels like a bowl game. You have they practice this afternoon. They'll have some kind of touristy type stuff that they do today. They had a team dinner last night, downtown where the mayor lives, and so you kind of have these, touristy type things you're doing around the fact that, you're playing a season opener too. Talking to players today, they said they're pretty tired the first day, that they've kind of gotten past that a little bit. They practiced on Wednesday. We'll practice again Thursday and Friday, but it's the kind of work that goes into making sure that the team's able to perform at a high level. They've had conversations for going on 2 years now about what's the best way for guys to sleep? What kind of meals do they have? I know talking to the equipment guys at Nebraska, I mean, they had to send everything ahead on a, to clear customs. So it was here when the team got here, and just the headaches that was with having to document every shirt and mouth guard and jock strap that got on that plane. So it's, I think everybody, now that they're finally here, is able to focus on the football part of it and not just how the heck do we get there, and how tired are we going to be when we get there, and those kinds of questions.
I was going to say, there's a lot of off-the-field questions that have to be asked and answered to play a game such as this overseas, in terms of an international setting. You just mentioned how the equipment had to get sent ahead, probably days in advance before even the team got here. I mean, is this thing more of a headache rather than like an experience, or is it a little bit of both, you would say?
It's both. I mean, I think if, the logistics type people, the behind the scenes people were being honest, it's a lot. It's a lot to make this happen. I mean, I know the equipment guys were, a week before the game having to send everything that Nebraska was going to take to Dublin on a truck and send it to Chicago, where it cleared customs in Chicago, and then had to basically be waiting for it when it got to Dublin. That's hard to do. I mean, they use these these chemical cages, like they're used by farmers that transport chemicals, and they had to use 18 of those to get to put on the plane to send everything. So I mean, it's you kind of had to get creative with things. I think everybody now that they're here is excited for the experience, but just making sure that all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. I mean, it took a lot of work. So, and it's funny too. I mean, Nebraska added 15 guys out of the transfer portal in the spring. I mean, one of the first questions they probably had to get answered once they committed was, what's your passport situation? Because that was another thing that I know was kind of a headache, was just making sure that all of that stuff was taken care of, and ahead of time, which you had to be on the ball. I mean, if a guy doesn't have a passport by June, he's probably not making the trip.
Wow, that's absolutely insane. So let's try to eliminate the headache portion of this conversation off to the side now. So overall, would you say this is more of a now the enjoyment now the enjoyable part of it? So you mentioned the experiences and the team activities, and so what is the team doing to really encapsulate themselves in Ireland? I mean, who knows? There's probably a handful of Irish players on the team as well, so maybe they're seeing their heritage. I mean, are these guys just getting the full traveler, I want to say tourist experience in Dublin before they have to focus on football again for the weekend?
Yeah, yeah. I think yesterday they went to a prison here in Dublin that was pretty famous. I know they were going to go tour one of the cathedrals here after today's practice. So yeah, they're getting the full experience. I mean, they're staying at a hotel that's it's a golf resort a little bit outside of town that looks like pristine yards. I wish my yard looked like that. But that's just kind of the other parts of it too. And it's funny. I mean, you got to kind of get everybody focused, and this is a huge game for Nebraska given all the changes they've had in the offseason, and just needing to get this year off on a good start. So it's kind of this balance of being a tourist while you're here, because a lot of these guys have never left the country before, but balanced with the reality of, okay, you got to go out and win a football game at the end of this week. It's not just a joy trip.
You mentioned the balance, the team chemistry. Do you think this is actually one of these trips in one of these games to start off the regular season that could actually get Nebraska off on the right foot? Because you mentioned now they need that camaraderie coming off of last year's 3-9 campaign, and there is a lot of pressure on the program as a whole.
Yeah, no, I think it could, and they've brought in over 30 new guys, new scholarship guys on the roster with the freshmen and JUCOs that enrolled. So there probably is a good amount of getting to know you that wouldn't happen if you weren't on a trip like this. So I think that's probably a benefit of it is you got to figure out who your guys are, and also figure out what they're made of. And a good way to do that is to go to a new place, a place where a lot of guys haven't been before. And the players today just talked about how it is kind of nice to have that little bit of downtime and kind of be tourists a little bit, I guess, before having to worry about Saturday's game.
So looking at the actual game factors, Michael, it's interesting because there is a bit of a time jump. And again, that's why you travel to a place like this much earlier in the week than you would normally would for a standard road game over here in the States. So at 5-hour time jump, I get it's more than you're going to get on the continental United States. So how have the players been able to adjust? I mean, again, we mentioned all the headaches, we mentioned all the joys of the trip as well, but how are they adjusted to this time adjustment now, going 5 hours ahead?
Yeah, they're actually 6 hours ahead of Lincoln. So they got here on Tuesday morning, and the approach is basically you got to stay up, no sleeping on Tuesday. So what Nebraska did was they got here, went over to the stadium, kind of went through a light workout, kept them up, and you try and get a good night's sleep on Tuesday night, and kind of roll with things on Wednesday. I know the coaches said today that Nebraska's players seem to kind of find their legs a little bit more as practice went along. Mark Whipple, the offensive coordinator, said the quarterbacks told him that they've never been this tired before. So, I mean, that's why you go early in the week, is to kind of get all that out of your system and get accustomed to things. But Nebraska has a performance laboratory in Memorial Stadium that handles things for various sports, and certainly they're plugged into football. But the time change and the fatigue and that kind of a thing was something that I know they spent a lot of time talking about before they went on the trip. And Scott Frost has connections in the NFL. He said he'd had conversations with coaches in the NFL who had gone over and played in London, and kind of what worked and what didn't, and various approaches. So now that we're kind of getting later in the week, I think guys are more accustomed to things. But I think there was definitely a 24-hour adjustment period for getting used to time change and fatigue and all that other stuff.
Is there anything that you're able to share that Scott Frost detailed about some of those adjustments, that maybe something that he has talked about with those NFL coaches about what works and doesn't work?
He didn't really get into big specifics. I mean, I think they were really concerned about that first day that they arrived, and kind of how to approach that. Because I think when you're tired, you want to go to sleep and everything else, but you kind of have to just power through. And that's why they did the workout that they did on Tuesday. It was to make sure that guys were accustomed and not kind of taking a day off in the middle of the week. I mean, it's hard to do, but you kind of almost have to make it as normal of a game week as you possibly can. And Tuesday is generally a pretty heavy practice for Nebraska when they're normal game prep. But that was one thing that I know that they were really, really making sure that they did, was they wanted to get them to Dublin, get a workout in, and just kind of try to get that clock and acclimation going as quickly as they could.
Do you think you can get a grand takeaway from this game when it's all said and done because it's out in Dublin, or do you have to kind of push it off to the side and take it with a grain of salt? Because again, compared to the NFL, they're professionals. They do it every year at this point. College football, this is a rare occasion where you're going to go over to a place like London or a place like Dublin, Ireland against Northwestern this weekend. So again, can you circle back to this game maybe in a couple of weeks and say, all right, this was actually a telltale sign of how the season was going, or this whole game is almost like a one-off, it just happens to count in 2022?
Yeah, no, it's hard. And with what's ahead for Nebraska this year, I mean, you can't discount it. That this is a season that has to get off to a strong start with the way their schedule is and the way it's backloaded. So I think that there are going to be, first game is always a challenge for coaches anyways. For this Nebraska team, you have, basically an entire new offensive coaching staff. You have a different play caller on offense. You have a new starting quarterback. You have 15 new transfers. There's so many new things anyways. And then you're throwing into the mix, oh, by the way, you have to fly to Dublin to play a conference game right out of the gates. So I think you're going to be able to take some things. Northwestern's having to kind of do the same thing, with the travel and whatnot. So I don't think the travel can be an excuse, but I do think that there are, things that could happen in an opener that might just be kind of exacerbated a little bit by the fact that you're doing it at another continent. So, I think Nebraska's players understand the gravity of this game in getting their season off to a good start. They had the same type of thing last year in week 0 with Illinois. And, I think, Nebraska's offensive coordinator, Mark Whipple, put it pretty well today. He said, we need to get through that first quarter and not have given the game away. Like that's kind of the plan right out of the gates. So, I think you'll be able to see some things in this game that are, maybe telling for what direction this team's going to go, and especially the offense, because it's going to be completely new look.
Wackiness and the Big Ten, it kind of just goes together each and every season. So Michael Bruntz with me from Husker 24/7. One more for you, and we could wrap this up right here. Your pick for this game, how do you see this going by the end of the day, Saturday, against Northwestern?
Yeah, it's I know some lines are out there of 12, 13 points, and that just seems like a lot of points. And these two teams played last year. It was Nebraska's best game of the year. It was the one game where they just really took it to an opponent. I think Nebraska comes out with a win. I think it's going to be a close game. I mean, for everything we've talked about, I think that kind of lends itself to being a 4-quarter type game. So I would say probably Nebraska by 7 to 10, just based on what they have now. And it's, there's going to be a lot of new stuff for, reporters that cover the team, because we haven't seen a lot of this team this fall. But I think Nebraska has the athletes in the right places to be able to give Northwestern some issues.
Nebraska, Northwestern in Dublin, Ireland, 12:30 Eastern, 5:30 local time over in Dublin on Saturday. Week 0 opener, Big Ten opener for the Huskers and Scott Frost and company. Michael Bruntz, thank you very much for joining me on today's show. Where can everybody find you on social media?
I'm on Twitter at Michael Bruntz. I'll be tweeting all week from Dublin, and of course Husker 24/7 for all the Nebraska coverage that you could possibly ever want.
Best Nebraska coverage around for sure. Michael Bruntz with me on the College Football Daily. We're going to see how it goes for Scott Frost and everybody else against the Northwestern Wildcats. Sure to be an exciting way to begin the 2022 college football season. That's going to do it for us. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the show on YouTube, on our 24/7 Sports YouTube page. And, of course, like, share, and download wherever you get your podcasts. If you are listening, I am Nick Kosko saying so long. Once again, this has been the College Football Daily right here on 24/7 Sports.